Welcome everybody to another glorious episode of the Put on Raiders podcast and a combination with the Student Body Right USC podcast because our guest, Roman Tomasoff, I hope I got that right.
You did?
I did. Good job. Good job. Pat on my shoulder. He hosts the Put on Huskies podcast. All things
Locked On Huskies.
Sorry, Locked On Huskies podcast. They cover the Huskies on a day-to-day basis. So knows everything about the football program, going from the Pac-12 to the Big Ten. Talk about a little bit about that. And the Raiders are in striking distance because our channel is USC and Raiders, and possibly drafting Michael Penix Jr. So we'll talk about all those things here on the podcast. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. All those things like that. Leave a comment. Leave a comment. All those things like that because that will help the show and the channel grow. All right, Roman, let's get started. Thank you for joining us, first and foremost.
My pleasure.
As far as recruiting, going into the Big Ten, you in the past, Washington has had a physical back, has a physical offensive line, defensive line. So that part of it, I think won't be a surprise to them, a surprise to Washington. But what do you feel about going to this conference now and without Kellen DeBoer? And that whole situation here where people are kind of everything's kind of maybe a little bit in flux at Washington right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of layers to that, right? Where when you look at the first couple of years of Kalen DeBoer's recruiting prowess, it wasn't necessarily the greatest. I really liked all the individual players they brought in. I think they did a fantastic job identifying talent. And while, national recruiting people looked at it and said, oh, this guy is only a 3-star recruit. It's like, yeah, well, so was Parker Brailsford when they brought him in. And, he's one of the best centers in the country as a redshirt freshman. So there were a lot of players like that when you look at these last couple of classes. Obviously, USC goes out and gets Rachimana Bulabulavu, who was my favorite overall player in this class that Kalen DeBoer had originally signed. But I'm really excited about what Jedd Fisch is doing with Washington in terms of on the recruiting trail, where he really wanted to expand Washington's footprint. They go out and they get a visit from a top 50 player in the country, Anquan Fagans, a safety out of Alabama. I like him a lot. They're doing really well with Dijon Lee, cornerback from Mission Viejo. They're doing really well with a lot of these top prospects that they seem to be really interested in. And then when we look just at the overall recruiting prowess, Jedd Fisch has said he wants this class to be the best in Washington school history, which is going to be really tough when they had a class that brought in Puka Nacua, Trent McDuffie, Leia Tulatu all at the same time. So there's a lot that goes into that, but what Jedd Fisch is doing is really promising. They want to seem to reload on the defense in this upcoming season. And then moving forward, I feel really comfortable about where this program is. An 8-4 season is probably the best case scenario, maybe 9-3 for the Huskies this year. But moving forward, there's a lot to build on and a lot to be excited about.
The whole AD situation, I know we have your old AD, Jen Cohen, and then now I think the other did another one move on as well.
Yeah, Troy Dannon left for Nebraska as of Wednesday morning. Yeah, it's been a whirlwind couple of days here.
So how does that affect the program as well? We know the AD is kind of integral in bringing everything together as far as all the sports go, and especially the success of a football program.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, big shout out to Jen Cohen. I've had a relationship with her for basically my entire life. So huge shout out. Love Jen. Love everything she's doing. And then, so Troy Dannon, last couple of days, the biggest thing where he did a really good job after he was in a really tough position when it came to the Kalen DeBoer contract, where it seemed like Kalen was never really going to sign even after, the $9.5 million offer that was put on the table by Troy Dannon around the Apple Cup in late November. So once that happened, it seemed like Troy he did a really good job of being thinking and saying, okay, I need to consider some other options here. Did a really good job going out and getting Jedd Fisch. He leaves UW at a really precarious time and in a very weird scenario where UW is in the middle of a basketball coaching hire right now. After UW basketball has struggled the past 5 seasons, hasn't been to the tournament since the 2018-19 season, has been very underwhelming under Mike Hopkins. Troy did the right thing, letting him go with 1 more year left on his deal. But then he up and leaves when UW seems to be the favorite to hire Utah State's Jeremy Sprinkle, who seems to be one of the the hottest coaches in the country right now in just terms of what he was able to do at Montana State, what he's able to do with Utah State this past season. So it's really, really difficult to see, just to project what that might look like. I still think they have a really good shot at ending Jeremy Sprinkle, but I think that's going to be just kind of the biggest thing that whoever ends up being the next AD is kind of tasked with right off the bat. But in terms of football, because obviously that's the big thing here, he did a really good job investing in NIL and just pushing for Washington to be on, I don't want to say the cutting edge, but just to be at one of the leaders in the pack in terms of NIL, in terms of investing in the football program, in terms of everything along those lines. And we look at where UW was in the late 80s, early 90s in terms of being one of the best programs in the country, and then making it to the national championship this past season, obviously, where he said he seemed to just have this mentality of, okay, we know that Washington's football team can be one of the 10, one of the 15 best programs in the country when it's fully invested in. Yeah. And whoever the next AD is going to have just big shoes to live up to, where Troy made a lot of big promises and he followed through on some of them. It just left too soon to see a lot of these things through. But I'm just really curious to see where the football program is going to go from here.
Yeah, it should be interesting to see what goes on here. I mean, we're all kind of like someone talk about some of the flights that I think when I was covering the Holiday Bowl, and Lincoln Riley joked about, like, passing other coaches and other programs in the air, like the flights that you're gonna have to take and USC is gonna have to take is gonna be something kind of be crazy as far as that goes. Jedd Fisch, are you comfortable with that hire? You like the direction? I think he did a good job at Arizona. They really were, with the young quarterback and that team, they were on their way. I thought it were going to be a really good, program going forward. And then now he makes that move to the Big Ten. He kind of has to make that move as a head coach. Yeah. Who knows? It probably might be just Big Ten, SEC, and that's it. Coming up soon at some point. Hopefully not, but that could happen. What are your thoughts about Jedd Fisch, and what do Husky fans and Trojan fans have to kind of look forward to with him in fold now?
So, like I said a little bit earlier, I feel that this is the best possible hire that could have been made. When we just kind of take a step back and look at the bigger picture, like you said, Dwayne, when you look at just what he was building in Arizona, he did a fantastic job with that, and was in a situation where he didn't necessarily have all the resources he might have needed to get to the cutting edge, to get to that top 10, top 15 ranking, where he did a fantastic job making sure that Arizona's number 11 in the final AP poll this past season. But it was only going to go so far in terms of some of their budget restrictions, in terms of some of the other things. So that's why I said Troy Allen did a really good thing in not only hiring him, but putting him in a position to succeed. Because one of the first things he told us members of the media after his introductory press conference was, I have an assistant coach salary pool that allows me to go out and hire whoever I want. And as a New England Patriots fan, he went out and hired one of my favorite defensive coordinators in Steve Belichick, which is really exciting to think about in terms of, when you look at what was the only thing that stopped Washington this past season in terms of Michigan's defense. Belichick's defense and what Michigan did are very similar in certain ways, in terms of just personnel, in terms of just when you look at asking somebody to do one thing and then showing one look pre-snap and then doing a whole nother thing post-snap. There are a whole lot of different things that Steve Belichick is going to bring to Montlake in terms of those kinds of things. But then on the offensive side, it was one of the best offenses in the country in terms of explosion, in terms of a whole bunch of different things. And then I love seeing my cat here in the background as well. But then when you look at what Arizona did last on the offensive side, they were top 10 in terms of explosive play rate. Washington obviously finished number 1. So there's not going to be a huge drop off in terms of that, in terms of what the scheme is going to look like. But at the same time, or in terms of just what the scheme is going to want to accomplish. But what it's going to look like, there's going to be a little bit more on the run game, where I asked Jedd Fisch what it was like working under guys like Sean McVay, like Mike Shanahan for as long as he did. And he said that he's taken his offensive scheme, all of his plays are kind of a combination of what some of those guys like to do, where there's an emphasis on play action. And, he went out and got Jonah Coleman, brought him with him to Washington. And Washington has one of the best running back duos in the conference, in my opinion, between Coleman and Cameron Davis, who's going to be healthy this season after missing the entirety of 2023 with a knee injury. So when you look at just everything he's going to want to accomplish. I think that it's all going to fit really well. And while, Washington is not going to be where it was in 2023, obviously, I think when we look back at UW at the end of the 2024 season, you're going to see a lot of positivity in terms of building blocks when you look at what's on film, when you look at some of the younger guys that might be developing, and just say, yeah, this Jetfish really does have this team going in the right direction.
So that's the USC side. So USC fans, that's what's going on with Washington. So we got satisfied that the Raiders have not. I think it's been 17. Every 17 years they draft a quarterback in the first round. Hasn't worked out very well for them, because that doesn't work when you got to draft them a little bit more often than that. They actually play, of the 17 games they play next year, 15 of the teams they play, their starting quarterback was drafted in the first round. So you would think Mark Davis would take the hint and kind of demand that they draft a quarterback in the first round. One of the guys, we also have a show called the Signal Caller, where we kind of dive into the quarterbacks. Got some all 22 stuff on Michael Penix Jr. What is first the man Michael Penix Jr.? What kind of thing does, we don't know about him as far as character wise, like the kind of person he is? If you can talk about some of those things, and then are the injuries overblown as far as that goes? Because I don't think he missed the game at Washington.
That's correct. So I'll start with Mike as a person, because Mike is a really hardworking, resilient, tough leader. Those are some of the words that I would use to describe him, from talking to not only him, but some of the guys around him, Roman Tomasoff, Jalen Polk, Jalen McMillan. Everybody around the Husky program would describe Mike as the perfect person that you want to follow. Because when you look at his injury history, which absolutely is overblown, I'll touch on that for a quick second. It absolutely is overblown. Yeah, he had one of the best offensive lines in the country for both of his 2 years at Washington. But it's something where he cleared all his tests at the NFL Combine, and people are still going to talk about it, obviously. But he definitely has found ways to improve his body and to make sure some of these things might not happen again. And I really am intrigued by him at the NFL level. If you put him in the right situation, I think the Raiders would be a fantastic situation for him, because he's somebody who guys are going to want to follow. And everything that you've heard about him over the past couple of years is that he's just one of the hardest workers in the room. He's somebody who came in and really did earn his spot. Where, when he transferred in, it was, Michael Penix is probably going to get handed the job. And he wasn't. He had to go through a quarterback battle with Dylan Morris and Sam Heward, Sam Heward was an incumbent 5-star guy with a long legacy in the program. And Michael Penix just said, this is going to be my team. I'm going to find a way to beat him out. And he did a fantastic job of working day in and day out to not only be the best quarterback the best version of himself, which obviously we saw every day after leading the nation in passing 2 years in a row, but he was just somebody who everybody really connected with in the locker room. And when he decided to come back for this past season, he was the domino that once he did that, everybody else said, yeah, if Mike's going to do that, we're all going to rock with him, because he's the kind of person that we want to be around every single day. And he was the one who really helped unite them in their singular goal of chasing a national championship. And obviously they didn't get all the way there, but they were able to make it all the way to that game, which was just such an amazing thing for this Husky team.
How much can he actually move? Like that's the thing that people, how much of an athlete is Michael Penix Jr.? Because with the Raiders picking right now, if they don't move up, you're looking at Nix, you're looking at Penix. I think the arm talent of Penix is it could be the deciding factor, but the movement skills and all the rushing touchdowns that Nix has had could be an equalizer for some teams as well.
So some of those were definitely designed when you look at Nix versus Penix, where one of the things that I always take into consideration with this, where I think there are two big factors. The first one was offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb definitely just said, all right, we don't want our guy to get hurt. We want to make sure we can take him as far as possible. And he has such a fantastic arm. Why are we going to ask him to run, and why are we going to risk some of those things, which I feel like is a big factor in that. And then number two is, let's look at some of the other guys that are going into the draft this year from that Washington roster. Two elite tackles in Troy Fautana and Roger Rosengarten. Roger just got mocked in the first round by Mel Kiper the other day. And then all three wide receivers, I think, will be off the board by the end of day two. Rome Odunze, top 10 pick. Jalen Polk, probably, I don't know if he's necessarily a fringe first rounder, but he's definitely be a solid second round pick. And then Jalen McMillan, probably end of round 2, round 3 kind of guy. So when you have that kind of supporting cast around him, why are you going to ask Mike to do so much more and risk re-injuring himself where he can absolutely move when needed? One of my favorite plays that I like to point out to when I talk about Mike's athleticism is in the 2022 Oregon game. On the first drive of the game, Brandon Dorlus has a free shot on him from the blind side on 3rd and 13. He makes a nice little spin move, goes out, gets around the edge, picks up 14 yards for a first down. To keep that drive alive, they end up scoring a touchdown and winning that game, obviously, as 2 touchdown underdogs. But there are so many little plays you can point to like that where when Mike needs to pick up a couple yards with his legs, he absolutely can. It's just not something that was ever designed for him in the scheme. And then when we saw a couple of design runs for him in the Sugar Bowl against Texas, Texas wasn't ready for that. So it's something where when he's asked to do it, he absolutely can. It's just, it's not his biggest strength. So from Washington's coaching staff's perspective, it was, why are we going to, take away our biggest weapon, which is his arm, especially going deep down the field with some of the other guys that we have.
The Senior Bowl, the reason why he kind of started and then left early, did he? I mean, because I just think they executives are only looking at film anyway. But just something that just to think about, like why was why did he leave? And I don't think when you look at him, because of the injuries, people are going to say, "Oh, maybe he got hurt." Ugh. Like everything about Penix is about him getting hurt. So
yeah, it had nothing to do with injuries. It had nothing to do with really anything like that. It's he went out and he shined during the practices. Like people were saying, "Oh, well, the quarterbacks weren't necessarily the most impressive." He walked away with the MVP from quarterbacks at that event. He didn't necessarily have anything else to prove. Yeah, you don't want to risk injury at any point like that playing in a game. But one thing that I always look at when I look at the Senior Bowl is most of the scouts don't even attend the game. Most of the scouts are gone by the time the game starts. So I don't blame Mike for not wanting to put himself in that situation. And then look at what he does at the combine. He goes out and probably has the best throwing performance of anybody at the combine. And of course, top 3 guys, Daniels, Williams, and May don't throw. But he went out and he just said, "Yeah, I'm going to prove myself and show that I am the best thrower that is out here at this event." So it's had nothing to do with his competitive spirit, had nothing to do with anything like that. It's just, I showed everything that I feel that I need to, and I'm not going to risk injury in a game. So I can't say I blame him for not playing in the game.
Yeah, no question. It's funny because people criticize him for that. They criticize Caleb Williams for not doing something at the combine, but everybody's quiet on Marvin Harrison Jr.
Right.
Who didn't even have a pro day. He literally he didn't even go to a pro day.
Right. I mean, I respect the approach that he's taking where he says, "Yeah, I know I'm going to be a top 5 pick." I mean, I wish I had that kind of confidence personally. But, and like, also, by the way, this is a USC podcast. That question to Caleb Williams, "Are you scared to compete?" was the worst thing I have ever heard in my life. That was absolutely ridiculous. Like, how are you going to stand up there and just look that man in the eye straight face?
Yeah, well, he's obviously looking for his viral moment. All you gotta do is watch the game between our 2 teams
Mm-hmm.
and see exactly how he wants to compete as well. So, what are some of the NFL teams who are the best fit you feel like for him in the draft?
So I really like the Raiders as a fit. Obviously, getting to work with Michael Mayer, Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers. I think that that's really nice, and I like the way the Raiders have improved their offensive line over the last couple of seasons. I'm not. I've seen a mock the Broncos a lot. I've seen the Broncos as a fit with just the current talent around that organization right now, outside of Cortland Sutton. I'm not super huge on that. One thing that I've been talking about for a while is I love the Vikings as a fit for Michael Penix, and I think that the Vikings are a fantastic fit for any quarterback in this draft, just with the supporting cast that's there. When you think about Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and TJ Hawkinson, it's hard to beat that. It's hard to get better than that. But when you just kind of look around, I feel that Mike is the kind of guy who's going to thrive wherever that he is. But the 2 things that I really look for are a good offensive line and then a solid supporting cast. I feel that he has the ability to make a solid supporting cast into a very good receiving core. but the offensive line is the most important thing. One team that I was really high on in terms of maybe moving down a little bit and still being able to pick him was the Atlanta Falcons. Then of course they go out and they sign Kirk Cousins, so that's not necessary anymore. But I felt that was the perfect mix of there's a bunch of really talented dudes as on the skill positions. You got a fantastic offensive line in front of you. I thought that he would be the guy to be able to take that team to the next level. And I mean, signing Kirk Cousins is still definitely a solid way to go for them. But those are a couple teams that I really felt fit well. And then as you kind of look down around the first round, I honestly just am really curious about what some of these teams that might be, anywhere from that 14 to 20 range. The Saints are one that come up where I think that they have that infrastructure in place. But with the Derek Carr deal, I'm just not sure what that's going to look like.
Yeah, I mean, what if the Rams take a flyer on them? You know what I mean?
Right.
Because I mean, at some point, Stafford has to be like you got to think about life post Matt Stafford. There's just so many possibilities there as well. It's crazy because just when the Pac-12 was absolutely exploding with quarterback talent, with wide receiver talent, with defensive line, offensive line talent, the conference is gone. Can you give me some of your favorite moments from the Pac-12 with Washington? Because it just stinks that like this whole thing kind of blew up. I won't miss the Pac-12 network. I can say that much. But
no, absolutely not. Hey, shout out to Yogi Roth though. I love Yogi Roth.
Oh, Yogi's the best.
Great
Yogi,
guy,
yeah. Yogi's phenomenal. His storytelling is unbelievable. Yeah, but can you give me some of your favorite? And then before we go, can you give me some of your favorite moments?
100%. So first of all, shout out to Yogi and his entire team. Got to hang out with them in New Orleans and in Houston during this college football playoff run. So that was kind of amazing. So growing up as a Washington guy in Los Angeles, one of my favorite moments was the 2010 game against USC, where Washington comes down and was able to get the victory. That was a really fun moment for me and for my dad, who's a UW alum. We got to go rush the field a little bit and got to hang out with some of the players. I thought that was really cool. Getting to just experience the run of Chris Peterson from especially 2016, 2019, when they made 3 straight New Year's Six bowls, got to go to the Rose Bowl. That was a fantastic time for me. And then this last season, when I moved up here to Seattle in 2019 to just kind of try to make it in with this program and try to find a way to get to the position that I'm in now. This 2023 run was everything that I hoped it could have been. I was like 10 yards away from that Rome Odunze catch to go ahead against Oregon with 1:30 left, and then being right there at the field for the missed field goal from Camden Lewis, watching everybody rush the field. Just everything about that season to the Apple Cup win, people rushing the field again for 12-0, being in New Orleans for the upset win over Tech, or upset because people had them as underdogs in that game. Just everything about this season was so magical and so amazing. As somebody who grew up watching this team and wanting to see them reach the highest peaks, I will never forget this year waking up at 3 a.m. to get to College game day and cover all that before the first Oregon game. It was just an incredible ride, and the Pac-12 will always have its memories. And basketball, since it's the first day of March Madness, Isaiah Thomas, cold-blooded, all-time favorite basketball moment for me personally.
Cold-blooded, yeah. So many games, so many moments in that conference, and now it's going to go away, and now it's going to be the Big Ten. So I think real quick, Will Rogers, it's how what can we expect from him as far as this upcoming season in the Big Ten? Are you happy with that transfer?
Absolutely. I think that Will is the perfect kind of stopgap for this program because UW has 2 really exciting freshman quarterbacks behind him right now. In Damon Williams, who had originally signed with Arizona and transferred up with Jed Fish, and then DeMarcius Davis, who's from Etiwanda, and who's just another exciting guy who's mobile, has got a big arm, definitely really projectable. I think that either one of them are going to be great options for the future, but Will Rogers is a good option for the present. And what this is all going to come down to with Will, it's going to be, can you get a couple more transfers along the offensive line and really make sure that he's solid? And then just who's going to step up on the receiving core? I'm staking my claim every chance I get with sophomore Denzel Boston. We watched him make play after play after play in fall camp last year. And then, of course, with the top three plus Jeremy Bernard behind him, he didn't necessarily have a huge chance to see the field. But I think that he's somebody who's going to emerge as a star with Will Rogers, and that Jeremiah Hunter is a guy that I don't want to say people are sleeping on him right now, but they're really going to get to know his name after the season because he was awesome with Cal for these last 2 seasons, and I think that he's going to be a star in this Husky offense.
You're gonna miss that Huskies and Cougars matchup every year. I mean,
it's still happening.
It's still happening. I mean, it's, as far as the conference goes. I mean, it's still, I know it's gonna still happen, but it's the Pac-2 now. It's the Pac-2.
You know what? That's true. I definitely will miss the Pac-12 rivalry aspect of it all. But the hatred between Huskies and Cougars will never die. Yes. And the game's going to be in Seattle at Lumen Field this year. I think that's going to be super fun.
Cool. So the Trojans take a trip out there this year. I've never been to I've been to Seattle, Washington one time. I was just in the airport. I didn't get to see anything. So hopefully we can take a trip out there. If I do, I'll look you up, man, to see.
Please do.
Yeah, we can hang out and talk shop, talk some football. Hey, thanks, Roman Tomasoff.
Yep, there you go.
Roman Tomasoff, locked on Huskies, everything Huskies, everything basketball, football, all that stuff like that. Thank you for giving some time on that and some Michael Penix stuff as well too.
Dwayne, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. Take you, brother. Take care, brother.
You too.